Okay, I'm live. This is great. And I think I'm a couple minutes early. It looks like uh, mom and dad are in the chat. Mom, can you hear me? Hooray! Okay, we will get started in a couple of minutes. See who else hops on. It's going to be a great day. I guess maybe I should put on the welcome screen, huh? Just getting one more thing ready. No worries, no worries. We got it out there in the end. This is so cool. I'm doing a thing. Hi, Mary. Glad you're on the stream. Okay, it's 6. We're gonna give it just a couple minutes because I think a couple people from the team said they were gonna be on. In the meantime, I think I've just sent in a question to the chat. mm, 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 mm. St. Augustine is nice. A lot of Florida in the answer. I really enjoy Pensacola too. See, we're getting a few more people logging on. That's fantastic. We'll get started in just a minute or two. In the meantime, enjoy the beautiful welcome screen. Yeah, Mary, I'll be interested to hear your thoughts on St. Augustine versus Pensacola. I feel like I need some kind of music in the waiting. I want to start in like 3 minutes at 6:05. But I know YouTube does a lot with like copyright and making sure that people's intellectual property is protected for the most part. So we're just gonna do 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 do. Mm, 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 mm. Great to see people jumping on the stream. We'll get started in just a minute. For those that just joined, are you able to see the Q&A, or is this kind of like a WhatsApp where you can't see past messages? Well, I know you can see everything. You were here from the very start. All right. Let's see. I'm going to end the Q&A for now, and it's confirm. And let's dive in. All right. So hello and welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for being here tonight. Since you're here tonight, that likely means that there is someone in your life going to Waterford, Ireland this summer for the GAA World Games as part of Foireann Deisceart, aka Team South, aka Kalani Blahana. It's Gaelic for flower girls. Yeah, that'll make more sense in a minute. My name is Allie D'Amico, and for the purposes of this team, I am leaning into my Dallas roots, but I'm currently residing in Boston. Tonight, I'll be your guide on a tour through the cities in the American South represented on this team. I invite you to enjoy a beverage and tonight, yeah. So I invite you to enjoy a beverage, learn some things that will make you better at trivia, and hopefully by the end of the evening, you'll understand why a group of women scattered across several different states decided to form a Gaelic football team together and fly to Ireland. Before we get into the cities, though, a few things you need to know. We play Gaelic football. Now, not all of you might be familiar with Gaelic football, and that's okay. You're about to be familiar with my favorite way to describe it to friends and neighbors, various people in the bar, etc. Gaelic football is like soccer and rugby had a baby, but somebody had an affair with volleyball. You've got a round ball about the same size and shape as a volleyball you can see on the screen here, but made of a more dense material. You've got two goals, about the same size as a soccer goal, like a soccer net, but with these two like rugby like posts stack on top of it. You can kick the ball, punch it, carry it, but if you run with it, you have to bounce it or solo it. That's kind of like juggling with your foot while you run. For every 4 steps, you can either score through the net for 3 points, which is less likely with this badass in the net, or you can kick it over the bar for 1 point. There are 15 players on a side normally. The pitch is enormous and the game moves faster than it has any right to, given how many rules there are. It's usually 13 aside here in the States, and the World's Tournament is actually going to be 9 aside. Should be a very fast moving game. We're super fun. We're super excited about it. It's chaotic, skillful, deeply Irish, and everyone on this team loves it completely. So, that's what it is and how it's going. But this is also supposed to be a bit of a historical tour. So let's take a look at how it started. The Ladies Gaelic Football Association, or LGFA, was only founded in 1974, 90 years after the GAA itself was established. The reason for the gap? The idea of women playing football was considered unladylike. That was not ancient history. 1974. That's within the living memory of a lot of people on the call. When the first ever Ladies All Ireland final was reported on in the Irish press, one reporter described the players' hands as frail, feminine fingers, which, at least he acknowledged were more than capable of getting to grips with the Gaelic football. How generous. By 1982, the LGFA had more than 4,000 registered members, and there were still people within the GA arguing that the game was unladylike, that it could cause breast cancer, and that it would hurt the popularity of camogie. Camogie is like the ladies' version of hurling, where it's a little bit like field hockey and lacrosse had a baby, but somebody had an affair with baseball. Also a fun sport, but I digress. That's a story for another time. Then we've got... So I want to be clear that all 3 of those arguments were made in the same meeting by the same grown-ass adults. It wasn't until 1986 that women got to play in the All-Ireland final in Croke Park. The home of the Gaelic Games. It's the most famous stadium in Ireland. 12 years after the association was founded, they finally got to the main stage. In 2017, the All-Ireland Ladies Football Final at Croke Park drew 46,286 people. And by 2019, that number has risen over 56,000, making it one of the most attended women's sporting events in Europe. Today, the LGFA has almost 200,000 members and over 1,000 clubs across Ireland and Britain alone, and is recognized as one of the fastest growing female sports in Europe. In 50 years, not generations, 50 years, women's Gaelic football went from being laughed off the field to filling Croke Park. And that's no small thing. Which brings me to us. We are Foireann Deisceart, Team South, a ladies Gaelic football coalition team made up of players across 6 different states in the American South: Dallas, Houston, Denver, Atlanta, Memphis, and Nashville. Most of us are in our mid-20s to mid-30s. We play across multiple different clubs and live hundreds of miles apart. And we train when and how we can. This July, we are traveling to Waterford, Ireland, to compete in the 2026 GAA World Games. The games will run from July 13th to July 17th, with matches at the SETU Arena and the finals at Waterford Park, Waterford's county ground. Over 2,000 players from more than 100 teams worldwide will be there competing in football, hurling, camogie, and of course, ladies football. We are one of those teams. 6 cities, 1 flag, 1 trip across the Atlantic. And getting there isn't cheap. Flights, accommodations, kit, which, if I do say so myself, are pretty rad. I designed them sort of with the help of the O'Neill's reps. The tournament fees, and that's where you lovely people come in. Tonight's event is also a fundraiser. All the money raised goes directly towards getting the team to Waterford. If you want to donate, you can scan the QR code, or we'll put the link in the chat. And it'll come back up at the end of the night as well. But first, we drink, virtually. And we take a tour to the cities that made this team. We're starting in Dallas, so grab your drink and let's hit the trail. Chapter 1, Dallas Fort Worth, the Metroplex. Kind of. Welcome to North by our local sponsor, Dallas Finn McCool, my home club. Big ups to Dallas. So, welcome to North Texas, where the stars at night are indeed big. The prairie sky is, in fact, wide and high. The highways, however, are a lost circle of hell from Dante's Inferno. Looking at 85. And two cities that have been arguing about whose turn it is to be important for approximately 170 years. Welcome. You've landed in the Metroplex, which is what the locals call the combined Dallas-Fort Worth area, because calling it anything else would require someone to admit that they're the same place, and nobody is ready for that. For many years, my teammate and I, Victoria, have lived on either side of the Metroplex. Victoria lives in Fort Worth, and I lived in Dallas. We've chosen not to discuss this. Just kidding. Both cities are actually very fun, even if they are quite different. But grab your drink because I don't think you're ready for this petty. To understand the Metroplex, you need to understand that this is a petty feud with no real consequence, just a lot of sass, quite a bit of silliness, and size if you ever have to drive through Arlington on any given game day. Now, according to my research, Dallas absolutely started it when in 1875, Dallas attorney Robert E. Cowart wrote that Fort Worth was so dull a panther could sleep undisturbed on a downtown street in the local paper, the Dallas Herald. This eventually led to one of Fort Worth's many nicknames, Panther City, but that's a story for another time. Now, Robert started it, but Amon G. Carter took it to the next level. Today, you may know Amon Carter for his Museum of American Art. Highly recommend. It's my favorite museum in North Texas. And old Amon was a Fort Worth newspaper publisher as well. He was also a civic booster and full-time Dallas hater. This Fort Worth tycoon and petty professional would supposedly pack a lunch before traveling to Dallas just to make sure he wouldn't have to spend a single nickel in support of a city that he considered to be his arch rival. This is not a metaphor. This man actually brought a bag lunch to business meetings in a city 30 miles away. Carter ran Fort Worth for 50 years in the early 1900s. He owned the Star-Telegram, the largest paper in Texas, launched the second radio station in the Southwest and the fifth television station in the region. He had complete domination of the media. Radio, TV, newspaper, he had it all in service of one mission, making Fort Worth look good and Dallas look bad. His favorite line, Fort Worth is where the West begins, and Dallas is where the East pitters out. Now, fast forward to the airport. As early as 1927, Dallas had proposed a joint airport with Fort Worth. Fort Worth declined, and each city went and built its own. Sure, fine, whatever. But by the 1960s, the FAA had had enough. Two separate airports, 12 miles apart, was ridiculous, and the federal money was drying up. In 1964, the federal government issued an ultimatum. Agree on a location for a shared regional airport, or we'll pick one for you. It took 30 years of negotiations, and they were sometimes, in the words of one aviation historian, quite contentious. Committees were formed, committees were dissolved. Dallas voters narrowly rejected one version of the deal Fort Worth kept pushing for, and eventually they hammered out a board. 7 seats for Dallas, 4 for Fort Worth. Dallas got more seats, and Fort Worth got the airport named after them first. Except they didn't. Fort Worthers are still complaining that Dallas got top billing in the name Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport. The airport, for the record, is actually geographically closer to Fort Worth and sits on land that used to be the Fort Worth Airport. And yet, Dallas-Fort Worth. And Dallas still has their own airport. Shout out to Love Field. It opened January 13th, 1974, and it was at that moment the largest airport in the world by land area, 17,500 acres. The dedication ceremony included the first ever landing of a supersonic Concorde on American soil. It was by any measure a triumph. It was by any measure a triumph. Today, it's still one of the busiest airports in the world and the bane of many a traveler with a layover. Drop something in the chat if you've ever had to try and navigate a layover at DFW in less than 2 hours. Dallas got their name first, Fort Worth got the airport, and that's the Metroplex, baby. While we're on the subject of petty problem solving, I have one more thing to tell you before we leave the Metroplex. Although, come to think of it, I don't think this is more of a petty problem as so much as a story of petty revenge. On Main Street in Dallas, there is the Jewel Hotel. And right across the street from the Jewel Hotel is a 30-foot tall human eyeball, complete with a blue iris, realistic red veins, and a permanent, slightly bloodshot expression. It just sits there in a gated courtyard, staring at you. It's called The Eye, and it was created by artist Tony Tassett. It stands 30 feet tall and is modeled after his own baby blues. He says there's no deep meaning. It was just a very large eye in downtown Dallas, watching, waiting, commiserating. Here's the bit that makes it quintessentially Dallas. The plot of land that it sits on was previously home to the Pretoria building, probably Dallas's first ever skyscraper. But in 1909, a billionaire hotel owner bought it, knocked it down, and the site sat empty. Now, according to legend, the hotel owner wanted to put up a parking garage there, but was denied permits because the community said that the parking structure would be an eyesore. So instead, the owner purchased the art installation, and it's been there ever since. The parking garage would have been fine, I guess, but now we have this giant eyeball and a park, which in my opinion is way better. So, to Dallas-Fort Worth, two cities that spent a century fighting over who's more important, built one of the largest airports in the world to settle it, and still argues about whose name comes first. May your layovers be short, but not so short, your pettiness be productive, and all your Panthers enjoy their naps. Sláinte. I'm going to pop over to the chat for a second and look at some comments. A lot of people's favorite place to travel was in Florida. All right, cool. And with that, we will move on to our next city. Houston. Our goalkeeper, Grace, comes out of Houston, and she's super awesome. All right, so Houston is this one is brought to you by our badass goalie, Grace. So Houston is the fourth largest metro area in the United States. And fun fact, Houston has no zoning laws, very little. You can build literally anything next to anything. And Houstonians have taken this as a challenge. A nail salon next to a warehouse, next to a Michelin star restaurant, next to a mega church. That's not hypothetical, that's just downtown. So grab your drink and maybe a snack. This story is going to make you hungry. When you think of Houston, what typically comes to mind? For a lot of people, it's Beyonce, oil rigs, cowboy hats, and sprawl. And sure, fine, guilty on all counts, but Houston has been quietly doing something extraordinary for decades that the rest of the country is only just now catching on to. Houston is the most diverse metropolitan area in the whole United States. Not New York, not Los Angeles, Houston. It has over 10,000 restaurants representing more than 70 countries and American regions. Oh, we're getting to NASA, don't worry. And the thing that makes Houston's food scene genuinely different from anywhere else isn't just that you can find food from everywhere. It's that Houston's communities have been blending these traditions together in ways that were wildly ahead of their time. It's largely thanks to the people of Houston that fusion food is what we know it as today. Houston didn't invent fusion food, but it's been living it since long before anyone called it that. One of Houston's most exciting culinary innovations is Viet Cajun cuisine, which emerged as Vietnamese immigrants blended their cooking techniques with Cajun flavors. Viet Cajun crawfish, seasoned with garlic butter and spices, became a local favorite, completely redefining Gulf Coast seafood traditions. You order a bucket of shellfish, you put on a plastic bib, and you get to work. It arrives drenched in an intense buttery sauce that melds Vietnamese and Cajun flavors into something magical. Rich and garlicky, complex, spicy, sour, and an unadulterated umami bomb. Now, before we set off to find the flavor fusion of your wildest dreams, it's worth stopping by Buffalo Bayou to see the bats. When most Texans think of bats, they often think of Austin. But did you know Houston also boasts its own bat colony of Mexican free-tail bats? Just a few miles west of downtown, in the Wash Street Bridge, there's the Wash Street Bridge, spans Buffalo Bayou, a 53-mile waterway running from the Katy Prairie all the way to the Houston Ship Channel. Tucked into the crevices of that bridge lives a colony of approximately 250,000 Mexican free-tail bats year-round. Most nights at sunset, they spiral out of the bridge and fly east along the bayou, winding through the skyscrapers of downtown Houston before dispersing into the night sky. 250,000 bats silhouetted against the Houston skyline for free. One of the best shows in town. They eat 2.5 tons of insects each night, and they are objectively doing more for the city than most people. A little hard to see, but this like cluttered bit of what looks like blurriness is actually all the bats flying out. The Mexican free-tailed bat has been the official flying mammal of Texas since 1993. Texas has an official flying mammal, because of course it does. And the bats and the food, and if the bats and the food weren't enough, Houston is also host to the Space City Scramble. Shout out to the Houston Gales, named, of course, for NASA's Johnson Space Center. And it has been the home of human spaceflight operations since 1961. When Apollo 13 said, "Houston, we have a problem," this is who they were talking to. These are the people who in 4 days figured out how to get 3 astronauts home alive using a cardboard tube and the CO2 scrubber from a lunar module. Houston doesn't show off, it handles things. So raise a glass to Houston, a city that regularly invents flavors, solves impossible problems for orbit, houses 250,000 bats 2 miles from downtown, and still somehow takes an hour to get anywhere. To the most delicious city in America, Sláinte. I'm glad everyone's enjoying the stories so far. Thanks for being here. All righty. Up next, we are heading northeast from Houston up to Arkansas, up through Arkansas. And as we cross the state, everyone raise a glass to Cotton Plant, Arkansas, home, a population not very big, and birthplace of Sister Rosetta Tharpe. If you don't know that name, write it down. Sister Rosetta was the first great recording artist of gospel music, or she was the first great recording star of gospel music, and one of the first gospel musicians to cross over into rhythm and blues and rock and roll. History has called her the godmother of rock and roll. She played the electric guitar like nobody before her and directly influenced a young Elvis Presley, Jerry Lee Lewis, Carl Perkins, and Johnny Cash, which matters because those four are about to become very relevant. While she never recorded in Memphis, she helped build the sound that would put Memphis on the charts. Tip your hat to Arkansas, folks. We're almost there. Welcome to Memphis, home of Maddie and Caitlin. They are our Memphis members, and this is brought to you by Silky O'Sullivan's, Celtic Crossing, and Cocoza American Italian. All right, so Memphis sits on the bluffs above the widest stretch of the Mississippi. It's named after Memphis, Egypt, the ancient capital of the Nile, because the founders saw the river and thought, yes, that's the energy. And they weren't wrong. This is the chapter where we slow down a little. Memphis has earned it. When you think of Memphis, many people think of Sun Records and Graceland. So we'll start there. Everyone knows Elvis recorded at Sun Studio. What's less told is why any of that was possible. What made Memphis the place where rock and roll was invented rather than anywhere else. It starts on Beale Street. In the early 20th century, Beale Street was a historically Black entertainment district, one of the rare spaces in the segregated South where Black artists could perform, connect, and build careers. W.C. Handy arrived from St. Louis in 1909 and began writing down and publishing the blues music that he heard there. The field hollers, the spirituals, the delta sounds coming up from the Mississippi, he recorded it all. And he became known as the father of the blues. But the music was already there. He just gave it a name so the rest of the world could find it. Then in 1950, a white record producer named Sam Phillips opened a small studio on Union Ave. Phillips believed that the raw power of Black music and its ability to resonate with wider audiences. He gave Black artists a platform and then blended rhythm and blues with country influences. Sun Studio became the place where musical innovation echoed the desire for social change. Integration reached sound before it reached the streets. Johnny Cash, Elvis Presley, and B.B. King all got their starts here. And they are all respectively dubbed the King of Country, Rock and Roll, and Blues. 3 kings, 1 city. Remarkable. Then, as if one powerhouse studio wasn't enough, in 1957, Stax Record opened, and Memphis did it again. Located in South Memphis, Stax provided a space where Black and white musicians collaborated during one of the most divided eras in American history. Black artists like Otis Redding, Isaac Hayes, and Booker T and the MGs recorded music that reflected real experiences, song about love, injustice, hope, and power. Their voices reached beyond the studio walls, echoing through protest and rallies. But here's the stat that really lands it. Out of the list of the first 100 inductees to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, 24 come from within a 100-mile radius of Memphis. Not from one city in the world, not from one country, from a 100-mile circle around one city on the bluff of the Mississippi. Blues, gospel, rock and roll, soul. Memphis has got it all and is home to the founding musicians of all of them. I am getting a little ahead of myself here. Sorry, everyone. All right. But Memphis didn't just make music. It made the music that made America reckon with itself. And then, as if that wasn't enough, there's barbecue. Memphis-style barbecue is one of the 4 predominant regional styles in the United States, alongside Carolina, Kansas City, Texas. Woo! Sorry, had to. And the thing that makes Memphis barbecue unique, the thing that has started actual arguments at actual dinner tables, is the question that every server and every barbecue joint in Memphis will ask you the moment you sit down: wet or dry? Now, I'm curious for those in the chat. I'm gonna put a poll in the chat, and I want to know how you like your barbecue: a dry rub or wet. Wet just means with a sauce, and dry means like dry rub. All right, I'll be curious to see everybody's answers. Dry ribs are covered in a spice rub before cooking and are normally eaten without sauce, while wet ribs are brushed with sauce before, during, and after cooking. These are not just preparation methods, they are identities, and people have opinions, strong ones. This is the kind of thing that comes up at Thanksgiving dinners and starts family feuds. One of the institutions that started it all is called Charlie's Rendezvous. Founded back in 1948 in a back alley of downtown Memphis. Charlie discovered a coal chute in the basement of his diner and turned it into a barbecue pit. Eventually, he converted the whole place into a restaurant and moved the entrance from the street to the alleyway. You enter through an alley. The city named the alley after him, and that's how Memphis does it. So, what are your thoughts? Wet or dry? To Memphis, the city that gave the world the blues, rock and roll, soul music, and some of the finest barbecue in the country. You didn't ask for credit. You just kept making things worth singing about. Sláinte, Memphis. It looks like we're seeing a lot of people who really enjoy the their barbecue with some sauce. Which brings us to Nashville. All the music. This is where Victoria, Miranda, and Baylor are. This is the club they're coming from, and it's brought to you by Kelly O'Brien's Irish Marketplace, the Irish in Nashville Network, or the Irish Network Nashville (INN), and the Ancient Order of Hibernians. Somebody from Nashville is going to have to tell me how to say that. I think I butchered that one. Sorry, everyone. Alrighty. We are heading northwest from Memphis up through the rolling hills of Middle Tennessee, and then suddenly the highway gets wider, the skyline gets taller, and there are, now I want to be precise here, an absolutely unsettling number of party buses with neon lights. Welcome to Nashville. In 2017, someone once counted 33 bachelorette parties on a single stretch of Lower Broadway in less than 2 hours on a Friday night, and noted the actual number was probably higher. Now, that was 2017. It's only accelerated since then. Nashville is currently the bachelorette party capital of the United States, the honky-tonk capital, and the fastest growing city in the South, as well as, and this is what we're here for, one of the most genuinely surprising cities in America once you get off Broadway and start looking around. Grab your drink, we're going in. Now, Nashville will absolutely tell you it's the honky-tonk capital of America. And look, Lower Broadway is impressive. But before we get too much further into things, I'm sure the Texans on the call would like me to point out that the actual world's largest honky-tonk is not in Nashville. It's in Fort Worth, Texas, and it's called Billy Bob's. It's 100,000 square feet, holds 6,000 people for line dancing, concerts, or both, and has bull riding every Friday and Saturday night. Not a mechanical bull, a live bull. They say everything's bigger in Texas, and Fort Worth would like Nashville to know that that includes honky tonks. Eamon Carter would like a word. Now, everyone knows Nashville as Music City, but here's the thing about that nickname. It actually dates back to 1873 when Queen Victoria heard a performance by the Fisk Jubilee Singers, the a cappella ensemble from Nashville's historically Black Fisk University, and reportedly said that these young people must surely come from a musical city. The Grand Ole Opry gets all the glory, but the original Music City endorsement came from a Victorian monarch reacting to a Black gospel choir. The Fisk Jubilee lives on to this day. This African-American a cappella ensemble is made up of students at Fisk University in Nashville. But before Nashville was Music City, it had a completely different nickname, and that was the Athens of the South. This was due to the city's early focus on higher education, culture, and classical learning. Nashville leaned in. Unlike most civic nicknames that are pure wishful thinking, this one they took literally. Nashville built the world's only full-scale replica of the Greek Parthenon in 1897 for the Tennessee Centennial Exposition. Not a scaled-down version, not an artistic interpretation, a complete replica, as accurate as scholarship of the day would allow, recreating the chamber of horizontal lines, the inclination of columns, and all of that. Look at it. It's a thing of beauty. It was supposed to be temporary, but nobody wanted to knock it down. And I mean, can you blame them? This is a thing of beauty. So the city rebuilt it in lasting materials in 1920, and it reopened as a museum in 1931. Ironically, taking about the same 10 years as the original Parthenon took to build in ancient Athens. Inside, there is a 42-foot tall statue of Athena. It is the tallest indoor sculpture in the Western Hemisphere. And we have some fun bits with our teammates having a good old time with it. There's Victoria's dog outside it, and here comes Victoria and Miranda doing some football shenanigans outside the Parthenon. It's awesome. All right. Now, we can't talk about Nashville as Music City without talking about United Record Pressing. It was founded in 1949, and it's the largest vinyl record manufacturer in North America. They've pressed albums for Stevie Wonder, Michael Jackson, Dolly Parton, and Taylor Swift. And during segregation, the company built a Motown suite inside its plant. a private apartment where Black artists could stay safely while recording in Nashville, a vinyl pressing plant with a secret guest suite, keeping the music going in spite of everything. That's Nashville, underneath all those bachelorette parties. So to Nashville, the city that gave the world country music, a full-size ancient Greek temple, and more. Yet somehow, underneath all the party buses and neon cowboy hats, it's still doing something genuinely worth singing about. Sláinte. And with that, we make our way west to Denver. Brought to you by our badass back, Emily. Now, I played with Emily a while ago in Houston once upon a time. We were part of the same Texas league, and she has since moved to Denver and is doing amazing things out there. I'm so excited to get to play with her on this team again. Alrighty, so now for something completely different. We're heading north and west, leaving what's considered the deep south and heading for the southwest. If you've never driven into Denver, from the east, you're missing something genuinely special. The Great Plains just go and go and go and go. As someone who's driven all across them for various reasons, let me tell you that the plains are just that, plain. And then suddenly on the horizon, the Rocky Mountains rise up like a wall the earth put there on purpose. Denver sits exactly 1 mile above sea level, and they are very precise about this. Very precise about this. This is on the steps of their capital where it's like right there at the 1 mile mark. So Denver sits exactly 1 mile above sea level, and they are very precise about this. Many of them won't shut up about it. Looking at you, cousin. There's even a marker on the steps of the state capitol building indicating the exact spot where you were standing, 5,280 feet above sea level. So grab your drink and possibly a can of oxygen. We're going up. All right. So I want to start with this horse. Yeah, I need to tell you about this horse. When you fly into Denver International, the first thing that greets you on Pena Boulevard, before the terminal, before the taxis, before any welcoming signage, is a 32-foot tall, 9,000-pound bright blue horse rearing on its hind legs with glowing red eyes. In the dark, you see the eyes before you see anything else. It's kind of terrifying. The sculpture is officially called Blue Mustang, but locals refer to it as Blucifer. It was commissioned in 1992 for $300,000 and was not installed until 2008. The 16-year gap is explained by legal disputes, missed deadlines. The city actually filed a lawsuit against the artist to recover upfront payment. And one genuinely extraordinary fact. On June 13th, 2006, a large section of the sculpture came loose from its hoist and in sculptor Luis Jimenez's New Mexico studio. It struck him and severed an artery in his leg. He died at age 65. The horse killed its creator before it was ever installed. His son, Adan and Orion, along with the studio assistants, finished the sculpture based on their father's detailed plans. 2 years later, the thing that killed their father went on permanent display at the entrance to the Denver airport. Denverites have been gawking about it ever since. The red eyes, for what they're worth, are not sinister. They're just LED floodlights, a tribute to Jimenez's father, who owned a neon sign shop in El Paso where the artist grew up and learned his craft. A loving tribute to a father rendered in the most alarming way possible, staring down at millions of arriving passengers at 2 a.m. Denver insures it for $2 million, and nobody has petitioned for its removal since 2013. It has been accepted. It's theirs now. Onto a friendlier site, Red Rocks. This is an amazing concert venue. It's 10 miles southwest of Denver, tucked into the foothills of the Rockies. There's a natural formation of ancient sandstone that geologists date back to around 300 million years old. Two massive monoliths, Shiprock and Creation Rock, each about 300 feet tall, and they produce a natural acoustic chamber so precise that it's considered the only naturally occurring acoustically perfect amphitheater in the world. It was the Ute people, uh, the longest continuous inhabitants of Colorado, who first discovered the natural acoustics of the site long before any stage was built there. When the amphitheater finally opened in 1941, the dedication began with a Native American ceremony before any classical music was ever played. The construction was done by the Civilian Conservation Corps between 1936 and 1941. Depression-era workers were paid $1 a day, laying 90,000 square feet of sandstone and 800 tons of quarried stone. A project estimated to take 2 years that took 5. A dollar a day, 5 years. The result is one of the most beloved music venues on earth. Pollster magazine named Red Rocks the best small outdoor venue 11 consecutive years. They renamed the award after it and stopped including Red Rocks in the competition because it kept winning. The award is now called the Red Rocks Award. Red Rocks is no longer eligible. That's either the greatest honor or the most polite ejection in award show history. The Beatles played their only Red Rocks show in 1964. U2's 1983 concert film Under a Blood Red Sky was recorded here and introduced the venue to a global audience. John Denver recorded a celebrated live album here, and jazz has been performed at Red Rocks since the 1970s. City Jazz Festival hosted Herbie Hancock, and long traditions of bringing jazz out of the clubs and into the open air and the mountains. Denver has produced serious jazz talent for decades, from vocalist Diane Reeves, who grew up there, to a long line of musicians who've called the city home. The city only launched its own dedicated Denver Jazz Festival in 2025, 40 concerts across 15 venues over 6 days, and in its second year was already sold out. Sometimes you don't realize what you have until somebody finally gives it a name. So, have you been to Red Rocks? Did you survive Blucifer? Let us know down in the chat. So, here's to Denver. A mile high and then some, home of the world's most acoustically perfect stage and its most aggressively unwelcoming airport sculpture. To the rocks that were there 300 million years before any of us and will be there long after. And to Blucifer, still watching, still glowing, not going anywhere. Sláinte. I don't think the blue ox wants to tangle with Blucifer. I think he took one look in those like demonic red eyes and just decided to stay downtown. Alrighty, as you can see here, we are on to Atlanta. We've made it to the last stop on our tour. We're heading back east from Colorado and dropping into Georgia. As we approach our destination, the traffic triples, the highways multiply, and the skyline rises out of the Georgia pines like it has something to prove. This section is brought to you by Thomas O'Reilly's Irish Pub. Big thank you to our sponsor there. And this is actually where the bulk of our team comes from. We've got our coach, Karina. We've got Kelly. We've got Lauren. We've got Meg and Margarita and Virginia. It's a great group of people out there, and I don't think we'd be doing this without all of the support coming out of Atlanta. All righty. Atlanta is the self-proclaimed capital of the South, and it has been burned to the ground, rebuilt from scratch, hosted the Olympics, and produced more hit records than almost any other city on earth. It's also the home of the world's most famous soft drink, which was invented, and I need you to hold on to your glass for this, as a direct result to a local ban on alcohol. Hard to say when we're playing such a sport. Shoot the party after the party is the best part of it. Alrighty, let's start at the beginning. Atlanta's original name was Terminus. Atlanta folks, you're going to have to help me on that one, because it was literally the end of the rail line. The city was renamed Marthasville, then Atlanta, and then in 1864, William Sherman's troop burned most of it to the ground, sparing only churches and hospitals, thanks to Father Thomas O'Reilly, namesake of the pub, of our sponsor pub. So fun fact that Karina, our coach, filled me in on. It was Father Thomas O'Reilly that went up to the generals and were like, look, we get it. We know you've got to like burn shit down and make a point. Fine. But all of our churches are made of wood and they're next to our homes that are made of wood. And so because he thought like he basically convinced the troops to not burn down the wood structures and the churches, and hence saving a lot of old space in Atlanta and possibly helping them to rebuild that much more quickly because they didn't need to rebuild a lot of the churches and the hospitals. All right. So in 1886, Atlanta and Fulton County went dry. They banned alcohol entirely. A pharmacist named John Pemberton decided to develop an alternative and created Coca Cola. The original formula contained cocaine extracted from coca leaves, which also gave the drink the first half of its name. It wasn't removed until 1903. You see, the temperance movement only really cared about alcohol, and that was it. Also, cocaine was kind of considered routine medicine at the time. On May 8th, 1886, he brought his perfected syrup to Jacob's Pharmacy in downtown Atlanta, where the first glass was poured. In its first year, the drink served about 9 glasses a day. That was that was where the most consumed beverage in human history started. 9 glasses a day in a pharmacy in Atlanta because the city banned alcohol. So, to recap, the temperance movement banned alcohol. Atlanta responded by inventing the world's most consumed beverage in human history, which started out as a cocaine tonic in a pharmacy. And, well, at least it didn't have alcohol. The temperance movement's got exactly what it asked for and more. Georgia really committed to the bit on sobriety, and the industry never really recovered. To this day, Georgia ranks somewhere in the 40s for breweries per capita. So all of that leads me to say, what do you call a soft drink? Soda or pop? I'm going to give a minute to put that in the chat. Put a poll in the chat. Is it soda or pop where you're based? Although I think many of you on the stream right now have lived in the South or have been to the South long enough to know what the actual answer is, at least for this region. Alrighty. Well, if you're traveling through the South, then the debate is useless. It's Coke. It doesn't matter what state, doesn't matter what brand, it's Coke. Coke, lowercase, generic. The Coca-Cola Company actually spent 30 years trying to stop this. They said it was running and advertising a campaign that would, Coke running the advertising campaigns begging people to stop using or to start using the full name. They admitted defeat and eventually just trademarked Coke for themselves. Atlanta's drink didn't just conquer the market, it conquered the noun. So between that and the lack of beers for export is why tonight Georgia's beer recommendation is a Coke. On the rocks if you're feeling fancy. Now on to the airport, because nothing says Atlanta like the airport. Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport has been the world's busiest airport by passenger traffic every single year since 1998, except for 2020, for obvious reasons. In 2024, it served over 108 million passengers, 108 million people through one airport in 1 year. That's roughly a third of the entire United States population passing through Atlanta annually. Texas likes to say everything's bigger there, and sure, Fort Worth has the world's largest honky-tonk, and Dallas has that giant eye, but Atlanta has the world's busiest airport. DFW, for the record, is number 2. Turns out almost everything is bigger than in Texas. My favorite fun fact about the airport is that it started out as an abandoned auto race track. Mayor Walter Sims signed a lease on it in 1925 and committed the city to turning it into an airfield. Atlanta took a racetrack, turned it into a regional airport, and then just kept going until it became the busiest airport on the planet. That is an extremely Atlanta thing to do. So raise a glass to Atlanta, burned to the ground in 1864, rebuilt by 1865, accidentally invented the world's most popular drink, turned a racetrack into the world's busiest airport, and then told the entire music industry where exactly the future was coming from. So 6 cities, 1 team, 1 trip to Waterford. The South has got something to say. Sláinte mhath. Oh, it looks like the chat was pretty split on the soda and pop debate. And that, folks, is our American South, a beautiful blend of the Southwest and the Southeast. Dallas and Fort Worth with petty squabbles, but always a lot of fun. Houston quietly feeding the world and housing 250,000 bats 2 miles from downtown. Memphis, the city that gave American music its spine and asks you every single time, wet or dry. Nashville, where there's so much more to explore beyond the neon rodeo. And Denver, where you can enjoy music in nature, if you make it past the killer horse. And Atlanta, burned to the ground, rebuilt from scratch, and still somehow the busiest crossroads on the continent. 6 cities, 6 chapters, and one team. I hope you've learned something tonight and got some new plans for your next vacation. I hope at least one of you is going to walk into a restaurant in the South next time and order a drink and listen for what they call it. Now, before we go our separate ways, we have a lot of wonderful people on the team, and there's a lot going on. We here's what we need help. Here's what we need. I'm going to be straightforward with you because we've sat through quite a bit of time together on this crawl, and you deserve a straight answer. Getting this team from 6 cities in the American South to Waterford, Ireland, July is not cheap. We're talking flights, accommodation, tournament fees, kit, and all the logistics that come with coordinating women who live in Dallas, Houston, Denver, Atlanta, Memphis, Nashville, and Boston that are all extremely far apart. So here's how you can help. You can scan the QR code to get our GoFundMe, or I will drop the link in the chat. I want to say thank you so much to everyone for being here tonight. It has been absolutely wonderful to read your comments and share these interesting stories I have learned about the cities that make up my team. I'll hang out on chat for a little bit and look through to see if there's any questions. But thank y'all so much for being here today. So it was interesting. A lot of people actually voted for barbecue sauce. They liked their barbecue sauce over the dry rub. Barbecue sauce is the only condiment my husband likes. He's not ketchup, mustard, none of that stuff. Only barbecue sauce. I don't like how messy it gets my fingers, so I do enjoy a good dry rub. But barbecue is barbecue. If it's made in Memphis, I will eat it really anywhere in Tennessee. Thanks so much for being here tonight, everyone. I'm going to end the stream here. This has been wonderful to share this experience with y'all. That's right. Thank you for putting that in the chat. If you want to come back and see this information again, you think my voice is great to wash the dishes to, do the house chores, eat dinner, whatever, we will be doing this same time next week. Same time, same content next week. Maybe I'll learn a few more fun facts by then and be able to sprinkle in a little bit more. Thank you again for being here tonight, everyone. Tell your friends, come back next week and join us on stream. And if you're in the Boston area, we will be hosting an event in Cambridge on June 28th. Have a good night, everyone.